So today it's a continuation of a discussion I started with raising the heel. Okay, I took an extreme of going from neutral to 11 degree, another one was 17 degree. I want to show the progression because again, when you go with a lower lift, you're not going to see this drastic change, but it's there. So at what point is it detrimental to the stance of the horse and the soft tissue? So we're going to just look at one foot and of a live horse on the different lift degree. Okay, so that's what we started. This is what I consider a normal foot, if there's such a thing. But the foot is under the bony column. I have a nice arch, 5 to 6 degree palmar angle, not horrible, and no wedge pad. That was the extreme. We're adding a lift of 11 degree. But we did it by progression. So I want to show you what the progression are doing. Okay, so that was the scenario when you actually lift the foot. You can see the pedal bone is kind of pushed forward onto the dorsal wall. You have a little bit of crushing of the sole arch and the sole body. You have a little bit of stretching also in the corium at the toe. It's a little bit like having, when you have such a high lift, it's a little bit like you wearing a loose shoes and you start kind of sliding around inside your shoe. Okay, so this is not exactly a good thing as far as positioning, because this is also start stretching here. So we saw that before in the other video we made when it changed the position of the extensor process quite significantly. But now the question is, what happened when you have progression, say starting with less of a lift to the complete lift, which was 11 degrees, and what happened to actually the joints? All right, so let's look at this when we gradually lifted the foot. Okay, so this is before adding no lift. After, you can see the difference. And again, we had a palmar angle of 5999, or normal for upright foot. Again, interestingly, your hoof angle is 48 degrees. So for some people to think that it should be 55, right there you need to put a wedge pad, okay, because it doesn't fit the norm. But what's interesting, you can see the position of the first phalange as it rides over the second phalange, with center articulation between the two, and that's very normal. All right. So, and also you have to remember that actually there's not so much movement in the articulation between the first and the second phalange. So this is when we started to gradually raise the heel. So it's 2.75 degrees, which is, not so unusual. A lot of horses have a 2 to 3 degree wedge pad. It's not that unusual. So you can see what's changing is the hoof angle. Palmar angle is not changing significantly for this horse. Again, horses can be different. But what's interesting already at that stage, the distal end of the first phalange is shifting forwards. And so does actually the extensor process. It's a little slight, but it's there. And so it's kind of already making a difference in terms of joint kinematics, okay? So, that's with the lift, and you can see how things are changing. So now we keep lifting. So that's 4 degrees, and I would say it's a little rarer to have 4 degrees. I mean, I'd be a bit worried if a lot of horses had 4 degree wedge pad. So the hoof angle getting better. So again, if you want to be 55, we might go even higher. Palmar angle change a bit. It will fluctuate a little bit how the horse shifts its load, but it's 5.96. It's still kind of similar as before. So everything is not staying in position here. And then what happened when you actually get to a really high lift? And it's not so atypical, especially with laminitic horses, which people tend to put really, I mean, not everyone do the same thing when they treat laminitis, but it's done quite often to have a very, very high wedging system on those horses. So what you see, that's hoof angle much better. So you're straighter, but as we saw before, you're actually compressing the corium of the wool and the sole, and also stretching the corium around the toe area. Palm angle not changing so much, but you know, it's there. And again, what's interesting, extensor process move forward, and that is actually not staying in place where it should be. And I remember the articulation between the second and third phalange has not a lot of movement. Let's compare what happened before and after a large lift. And as I say, progressively it kind of got worse, but that's kind of like before, not the joint space, not where the joints are. And then after, you can see there's a big difference. So the question is that a good thing? You have a little lip, and this is meant to not have, you know, the bone kind of riding over that or closer to that, okay? So this is a discussion I made for everyone, so we can look at it. What's important to consider, it's the range of motion of those phalanges. So the center of articulation between the third and second phalange is it's not huge. You obviously can't go all the way here because you would have a problem, but it actually has quite a range of motion. Whereas the range of motion between the second and first phalange does not have a lot of range of motion. Actually, it's if you were to have articular ring bone here, it's probably, and that would be fusing between P2 and P1. It's not as bad as a deal as having articular ring bone between P2 and P3. So the question to ask is it such a good thing when things get very subluxated in a joint that actually you're kind of moving out of joint space between the second and first phalange? That's not a good thing, okay? That's far, this can take a little more range of motion than this. This is not normal because it kind of tends to stay pretty tightly into that joint, a very little range of motion into that. Another thing to consider when you start actually manipulating joint and actually subluxating some area of the lower limb, and including eventually the whole horse, but just to go and focus on the lower limb, you have the navicular bone and the collateral ligaments to the navicular bone attached in this region. And if you actually start moving that out of socket, you're actually stressing also those collateral ligaments. So we are doing the kinematics of those joints, and it takes a long time because, again, it's a little more complicated than you think. So this is just for you to give an idea of what you can articulate and can't. So we have a mathematical model to do stuff, but right now we're not done, so we're not going to explain everything. But I take joint space and articulation seriously. We're also working on, that was a presentation I gave in Spain at the Congreso de Podologia. Another thing to consider is when you start actually re-articulating joints abnormally, what happened to other soft tissue besides the corium, the sole, etc. Well, you know, everyone is very concerned about navicular issue, and you really need to kind of consider that. And you change things, you're going to have problem. You're going to affect other tissue, and that's only the tip of the iceberg.